Hey, I'm Brian Cohn of Bco Knives. In this video, I'm going to make the Gentry Knives build-along knife. Let's get into it. To start this one out, there's a few minor changes I'd like to make to this overall handle design. So I like my pins to be a little bit lower so that the pin falls at the thickest point of the handles. So I moved it to these two spots right there, and if you look over a bunch of my knife designs, you'll see that's very consistent with all of my knives. I find that if I take a few seconds and eyeball where the pins are going to fall, I hit the right spot every single time. And I seem to get a decent result with my pin placement, so I am pretty happy. As you can see here, I just take a few seconds just to make sure that the point of that center punch lines up where I want it. You just have to give it a good whack to get that center punch in. Not only are these new pin placements more my style, but it'll actually allow me to use my 1/4 inch pins like I like. While I get these pin holes drilled, let me throw it over to Matt to explain what's going on with this challenge. Matt, why don't you introduce yourself real quick?
Matt here with Gentry Custom Knives, and I wanted to tell you guys about this build-along challenge I've got going on. So I decided to do a 4-part video series on building a very simple scalpel design fixed blade knife that any beginner or advanced knife maker can get involved in. Now, I reached out to a ton of my sponsors and people that I work with, companies I work with, and they all have decided to pitch in a ton of really cool prizes, and it's really turned into something way bigger than I ever expected. The top #1 prize is a $2,000 gift certificate to OBM Tools, so you can pick up a new grinder. Second place is going to be a $500 gift certificate to Beaumont Metalworks. There's 10 or 12 other sponsors that are involved in this, and it's really turned into something extremely cool, and I hope to do more in the future. So hopefully you guys have a good time with this build along, and excited to see all these finished builds.
Thanks, Matt. This is a really cool thing that you put together here, and I know it's bringing together a lot of the knife making community. It's so cool to see everyone come together to make the same knife and see all of the creativity that people are putting into their knives. Mine might not win anything, but that's totally fine, and I'm super excited to show you guys what I can make. Do you guys ever get those moments in your life where you look at what you just did and think, what the hell am I even doing? So here's what just happened. So I just put in my stamp on it, but as I'm trying to do the recording for this video, I lined it up, and it's a little bit further down than where I wanted. It's not quite as straight as I wanted, but I took the time to make sure that it looked really good on camera. And after I got done, and I'm kind of kicking myself because it's not as good of a stamp as I want, I then go around to the other side of my camera and realize I didn't push the record button. So you know what, that's what it is. So from here on out, I'm gonna go ahead and do some texturing, like some forge texturing on this. I want to put in a distal taper on this thing. I'm not really going to mess with the handle much, just because I know that this is kind of a smaller handle to begin with, and I don't really want to mess with that geometry, because Matt Gentry did a fantastic job designing this thing. Actually, I think it's Gentry's wife that did the designing on this thing, but I love the overall shape of the handle. I'm going to do just a little bit of a distal taper on the blade itself and put in a little bit of brute to forge texture on the top. And honestly, the good portion of that B-cone is probably going to get ground away when I put in the bevels, so it is what it is, guys. Now to get to work on putting in that distal taper, I'm going to go ahead and use the cross peen on this hammer to put in some nice deep grooves. I mean, deep is kind of relative because this piece of material is so thin, I don't actually have to strike that hard. But putting in these grooves will allow me to flatten it, like right here, where putting in those grooves makes it so that the material actually stretches out and thins out a little bit, putting in that little distal taper. You'll notice in this heat that the spine of the knife is actually getting a little bend in it so that the point of the blade is pointing up. I'm not really looking for that design, so in the next couple heats I switch over to a little 1-pound ball peen hammer, and these nice light strikes on the spine area will actually squish that material out so that the point of the blade will start to turn back down, and that spine will actually curve in the other direction, which is more the aesthetics I'm looking for in this blade. While I have you guys here, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to the channel. Only about 5% of the people that watch my videos are actually subscribed, so if you want to go ahead and see more of me, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, guys. It would help a lot. Here I switch back to my 3-pound hammer to do some planishing blows. I don't really like all of those little itty bitty ball peen hammer hammer marks. So I'm just using this flat portion of my 3-pound hammer just to flatten out all of those hammer marks and to, do the last little bit of straightening on this blade before I switch over to, really focus on getting the heat treat correct. It looks as if I have my knife nice and straight, and I can start to actually look at the little minor changes it took under this forging process. Now, it's not like a gigantic change, but just a little bit of a subtle change, which I'm really happy with. I hope this makes it nice and unique. I just finished forging out the distal taper on this thing. As you can see, it's nice and thin up there at the point up here, but I still have a little bit of, thickness back here towards the spine. So I think that this is going to be really comfortable. I honestly kind of think it got like a little mini kukri-esque shape to it. I mean, obviously not a traditional kukri. This thing is little itty bitty, but I kind of like that design. And this is going to be a knife for myself here in the shop. So all these little flaws I'm totally okay with because it's a knife for myself. But I am going to go ahead and do the annealing on this thing, and then we'll go ahead and get it quenched. So let's get back over to the forge. You gotta love that slow-mo. So anyway, so after I quenched that knife in the oil, I moved it up into my aluminum plate press to, try to keep it nice and straight. My thoughts are that, because it's such a small and very, very thin stock of material, it's likely to pick up a warp in that quench, so I put it up into my aluminum plate press. Being a one-man person, I couldn't, film both of them. I really need to focus on getting the knife up there. So, sadly you guys couldn't see that thing in action, but go ahead and check out the eye right there. I will link a video over to my aluminum plate press build video so you guys can see what that looks like. But anyway, so I'm really hopeful. I'm hoping that the thing, comes out nice and straight. So I'm going to run over and grab it real quick. Clean it off, and I'll show it off and see how the thing did. Cross your fingers. I'm really hoping there's not a warp in it. Hey, this thing turned out really, really good. So the blades portion of it is nice and laser straight. The only downside is the handle portion did get just a little bit of a warp, but that is very fixable in a straightening jig when I do like a shim temper. So that I'm really not worried about. So this was an absolute success. I'm really happy with how it turned out. And yeah, we are pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and do a quick shim temper. And then tomorrow I'll come back and grind in the bevels. That's it for this video. I truly appreciate every single one of you guys for your support of my small business. I couldn't do half of what I do without your guys' support. Please go ahead and check out my Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok pages. All of the links for those will be in the description down below. I also have a website if you want to check out my available knives. That will also be down in the description down below. I truly appreciate you guys, and if you want to hear more from me, go ahead and check me out on the Work For It podcast. That is a fantastic podcast with Brian House, Ben Butler, and myself, where we talk about business in the workplace and jib and jab back and forth. Really interesting discussions go on there. I truly appreciate every single one of you guys. Have a great rest of your day.